with Tracy Mommy Reads. I am back again with another video. Today, I am going to be talking about the book Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. Then She Was Gone. If you watched like a video I posted maybe a couple of weeks ago, then this book will look familiar to you because I did a like a reading retreat with one of my good friends when we went to Austin and we read books and talked about books. You should really check out that video if you're interested in doing something like that. But this was one of the books that we read together while we were there in Austin. And as you can see, had a lot of thoughts about this one. So I'm looking at my notes, and the first thing I had on here, like, because what I was doing, I was like flagging pages and we were talking about it, and I was taking like little notes on my phone. But as many of you know, I also have the reading app, and that's what it's called, on my phone, where I log books, give them star ratings, and, you know, just make observations and all that kind of stuff. And one of the first things I wrote down was, this book was crazy, never expected the turn. So that was after I read it. And Lisa Jewell, you know, she writes in the suspense genre, thriller genre. And I think that I've read maybe a handful of her books, and they never disappoint. I think a couple of them, it's like, you know, I maybe have figured out the twist, but the writing and the pacing and the buildup is always there. You know, initially I was kind of like, what is going on here? It seemed to kind of drag to me in the beginning. But then once, you know, because we were getting chapters from, first of all, let me back up. I'm jumping all ahead. For those of you who don't even know what this book is about, let's look at this blurb. Okay, so Ellie Mack was the perfect daughter, and then she was gone. 10 years after Ellie's disappearance, her mother, Laurel Mack, is trying to put her life back together when she meets an unexpectedly charming man in a cafe. Before she knows it, she's meeting Floyd's daughters, and his youngest, Poppy, takes Laurel's breath away because the eerily precocious Poppy is the spitting image of Ellie. So that right there had me with this book, you know, when I decided, okay, I think we should read this for our retreat, because I immediately was thinking, oh, you know, hey, Poppy is Ellie, right? And some kind of way, this man she's falling for has kidnapped her daughter, and, you know, and maybe the daughter doesn't remember her. But the thing that's crazy, and I feel like this was intentional, which is the mark of a very good blurb, because it pulls you in and you want to know more. So that first line when it says Ellie Mack was the perfect daughter, and then she was gone, and then we go to 10 years after her disappearance, and, you know, she meets Floyd's daughter. One thing that's not given away in any of that is the age of these kids. Okay. So I'm not going to say anything because some of you may be smart enough to put the pieces together, but I'm not going to say anything. But that, once I started reading it, is why I was getting confused, because I went into it based on this blurb thinking something totally different was going on than what was actually going on, because we were getting chapters like from like Ellie's perspective. We were getting chapters from Laurel's perspective, and, you know, other characters. And it was just one of those things. You're like, where's this going? Why are these people having their say? And when you get about midway, it starts to become very clear, like, what's going on and why, you know, we needed to hear from these people. Yeah, the first line I have after never expected to turn was about the ages of Ellie and Poppy and what I thought. You know, most of the time when I read suspense and thriller books, it's usually the way that they start out. They're pretty much, they all follow a formula, right? somebody's gone missing or somebody's gone murdered, right? Those are usually the only two scenarios in books like that, because it gives the reader as well as the author, gives them something to solve, gives them something to have you look forward to uncovering. And I've only read maybe a couple of books where when that formula is used, maybe children are involved. And I feel like for me, while I enjoyed the, like the pacing and the, what's happening here and putting everything together and how things twisted, it was still hard to digest because, kids were involved, and I wonder also if I would have like been as intrigued or interested or into this book had I not been reading it with someone else, right? Because what we were literally doing, as I mentioned in the video about the retreat, like after we would read a chapter, like, okay, like this is chapter 7, and most of them were like then and now. So you read chapter 7 and you get to the end of it and you're like, and then I turn to my friend, I'm like, what chapter are you on? Have you got to 7? And then if she's like, no, I'm finishing up 6, I would literally stop and wait for her to finish 7. And then we both will be like, and I don't know if something actually happened in 7. I'm just using this as an example. And then we would talk through it before we dived in and moved on, to the next chapter. And I think that added to the experience of this book, in all honesty, because I don't know if I would have plowed through it after getting to certain parts of it. Because my thing is this, I've read a lot of books where, and being an author, this is going to sound very hypocritical and probably crazy, because at the end of the day, when you put together a story, it's your story to tell. You use the characters, you use the plot, the story mechanisms, the way you see fit. And somebody like Lisa Jewell, for example, I know she has a following, so you write also for your audience. But I've read several books, and not just her book, but books where I felt like, could we have not done this or made the characters a little older, or, did something where it wasn't so like almost like cringe and a little bit like dirty and not in a good way. Like, for example, I'll give you an example, because I love to like every blue moon throw some Twilight stuff in there, right? I feel like a lot of stuff with Twilight, with Edward and Bella, like, imagine the story if Bella would have been a college student instead of a high school student. Let's just start her out as not being a minor, and a lot of the themes and thoughts and stuff where people were like kind of getting the ick. Perhaps that would have, we could have avoided that altogether, because you have someone that's already like 18, 20, 21 or whatever, that is legally an adult, and yeah, it's fantasy and it's not real and all those things. But sometimes just like a small little change like that changes the whole dynamic of the book and what our minds are willing to accept, and not be reading it and going, you're reading it and yeah, you're intrigued because that's human nature. But at the same time, you flip the pages like, like you don't really want to. And I skipped a couple of pages in here, like the details of some of the pages, because I have such strong feelings about like how I felt that could have went a different way. But I mean, then I guess my jaw wouldn't have been on the floor had it gone a different way. But yeah, the thing that was so crazy to me, it was giving major red flags. So Ellie, her parents were together, very much together and very much married. when she went missing. She had an older sister, and I think her brother was younger. Yeah, her brother was younger. So I mean, it was a whole family unit, and as I'm sure this happens in real life as well, when a couple loses a child, whether they go missing and or they're found deceased, or they die, like in normal accident type stuff, and don't go missing. I just can't imagine the heartbreak and stress and agony that would put on a relationship, because I'm sure each person is perhaps blaming themselves. Maybe they're blaming each other, and a lot of those marriages tend to fall apart. And so her parents were, separated. And then 10 years later, her mom decided to put herself out there. And the thing that was giving me red flags is like, this Floyd guy he was too perfect. He was too spot on, and he moved very fast, thereby making her feel like she needed to move fast as well in the relationship. And like I said, I started putting things together, but it unfolded in a way I never would have imagined or predicted. When you kind of see the role maybe that Floyd, the new guy, played, and like why Poppy maybe looked so much like Ellie, and what that was all about. That whole part of the book and the ride, as you get backstory as to what happened to Ellie and who else was involved, it was bananas. And it's like, lady, how did you come up with something so diabolical? You really have to wonder sometimes about authors that write in that genre, and when they give you those crazy twists and storylines, you're just like, okay, you might need to be on medication. Mm-hmm. The other thing I thought was very clever is how, and this has happened in other books I've read also, but in this particular book, how the author has us like disliking characters or thinking that they're harmful, and then she flips the script and you're kind of like, feeling sorry for some of them, and people who you initially maybe thought were villains or whatever. So I thought that was like really a dynamic way to present a couple of the characters in the book. Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, even towards the end, when we kind of got a bit of a resolution, people from Ellie's past popped back up into the story, and you're kind of like, oh my God. But unfortunately, as with real life, when people are no longer with us, life does go on without them, and it looks different for everybody. Everybody grieves differently, and we just got to keep living, But the story was just, I'm telling you, if you are looking for something that is, I'm looking at this People magazine. They like have a quote on the front. It says, an acutely observed family drama with bone-chilling suspense. That's pretty accurate. Let's see, US Weekly says harrowing. Bustle, the perfect distraction. And yeah, there were a lot of distractions in this book that will keep you from guessing what's really going on. If you guessed the twist in this book, I don't think that it was hard to maybe guess the twist, but if you guess how it happened, then you might need to be on medication as well. Yeah, you may need some help as well, because that was just crazy to me. I still have not got over that, and Ellie and her fate and all of that. That was just, oh my God, I wish that would have been different. But all in all, yeah, like I was saying, if you love like thriller stories, stories that are going to keep you on the edge of your seat, keep you turning pages, you know, make you clutch the pearls, that do provide a resolution, that may not be the happily ever after, you know, you get from like romance books, but it does give you some sense of, you know, finality with the story, and it's something that you can just, you know, get to that last page and be like, you know, and you close the book and you kind of got what you needed from it after reading all of this. Then I think that you would really, really enjoy Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. But I don't know if the author had trigger warnings on her page or not. And they're like on her website is what I meant, because I let me see, I don't think there are any in here, or if there are, I totally skipped over them. And I usually do that. You know, if I'm reading on my Kindle, I feel like most of the time with Kindle, because it's an ebook, authors will place their trigger warnings right there, like in the Kindle, or there'll be a hyperlink to click to go over to their website so that you kind of know what you're getting into. I feel like maybe once or twice, and maybe it was with a dark romance or a mafia book or something, have I ever looked at a trigger warning and said, oh no, I'm not reading that. I mean, that's probably only happened twice, because, you know, I'm still interested in knowing, okay, well, how are they using this, or what was that? But I don't know, maybe I would have liked to have had a trigger warning with this one. You know what I definitely would have wanted to have a trigger warning for, and I know she probably has them. Karen Slaughter's Pretty Girls, because when I got I couldn't even finish that one. But yeah, if the trigger warnings exist, you may want to check them out before you get into this, because like I said, it's hard for me when there are stories about, you know, kids, like, and I'm, keep in mind, I'm 56, so somebody 20 is a kid to me, but especially like minors, like if we're talking high school kids, or, you know, something like that, or small children, like, and having things happen to them in books, that's, I'm flipping past that, or I'm not gonna finish it. So just, you know, that's keep that in mind if you go into this one, you know. But if you've read other books by her, then you probably know what to expect with her writing style and her pacing, and the type of story that she delivers. So you would definitely enjoy Then She Was Gone. If you have read Then She Was Gone, I would love to know your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. You know, and if someone does put in the comments, feel free to do a spoiler. So for those of you that look at comments, just be forewarned, because I just want to know, when you got to what happened to Ellie and how that all went down, how did you feel about that? Let me know. I need to know in the comments if there were other people that were kind of like me, just aghast by that whole time period and those scenes that she wrote in the book. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure that you like this video, and if you have not already taken the opportunity to subscribe to my channel, please, 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 please go ahead and do so now. Thank you so much to everyone that has already subscribed. I believe I'm like, at the posting of this video, around 1830, you know, like, it would be so cool to get 170 more before the end of the year. And that can only happen with you guys sharing my videos, you know, with people that you think would enjoy my content, or, you know, recommending my channel to people so that I can get those numbers up. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you next week. Bye.